Okay, hello everyone. Thank you for tuning in. My name is Adam Starman. I'm a producer and webmaster here at Promethean Action. Thank you for tuning in to our live question and answer show. We do this show every Thursday at 11 a.m. And we've been doing this now for about 4 months. And if you've been tuning in frequently, thank you very much for supporting us. I think our shows are flowing much better than they did in the beginning. Thank you for coming in, asking your questions, and telling us what you really think. So I'd like to start off by immediately giving shout outs to our frequent supporters. Melody Hart, thank you very much. Good morning, Dream Team. Let's rock and roll with some real answers. Thank you, Melody. And unfortunately, StreamYard took away, I think, Paul Trainer. Thank you very much for coming in. Thank you for viewing from Liverpool, I think. Thank you very much. Everyone, let us know where you're from. As you're coming in, please drop a like real quick and let us know where you're from. I already seeing some names I remember here. Yes. Okay, thank you. DH, welcome. Yes, Paul, good afternoon. Welcome from Liverpool. Thank you very much for tuning in, Paul. Okay, so today I originally had named this show about the fact that Trump on Tuesday reposted our Monday show on his Truth Social. Let me pull that up real quick, just in case people didn't see that already. So yeah, Trump reposted our Monday show on his Truth Social, and I just want to pull that up real quick, just for some context. So here we go. So here was the post. It was really simple, and it came in at about 7:30 on Tuesday. We got tons of views on our YouTube video because of this. When you click through, he didn't send it directly to our YouTube channel. It came from this group Truth, but I assume he actually watched it. And here's the link to our YouTube video. Okay, so this is what prompted us to do today's show. We're going to talk more about this. But then last night, I don't know if people actually saw the signing. The shutdown now is officially over. The Democrats' temper tantrum is completely finished. Starting the government, it was signed last night by Trump at about 10 p.m., between 10 and 11. So this morning, all the air traffic controllers and everyone's getting their food stamps and SNAP benefits. So I want to start off by actually, I don't think a lot of people saw this because this literally just happened last like 12 hours ago. So we're going to start by playing it in minutes, and this is going to set the stage for the rest of today's show. So here we go.
It's very important what has taken place.
The volume gets louder in a minute.
How good government can be and how bad government can be if people don't know what they're doing. For the past 40 days, Democrats in Congress shut down the United States in an attempt to extort American taxpayers for hundreds of billions of dollars for illegal aliens and people that came into our country illegally, from gangs, from prisons, from mental institutions. They wanted to pay them $1.5 trillion, which would have really hurt our healthcare businesses and our recipients at levels never seen before. Today, we're sending a clear message that we will never give in to extortion, because that's what it was. They tried to extort. The Democrats tried to extort our country. In just a moment, I'll sign a bill exactly like we asked Democrats to send us all along, many days ago. This cost the country $1.5 trillion, this little excursion that they took us on. Republicans never wanted a shutdown and voted 15 times for a clean continuation of funding. There's never been a time when one or the other party ever didn't sign a continuation. It's just a continuation, not a big deal. It's a continuation, and we'll talk later. Yet the extremists in the other party insisted on creating the longest government shutdown in American history. and they did it purely for political reasons. I want to thank Speaker Mike Johnson, Senate Majority Leader John Thune, as well as House Majority Leader Steve Scalise, Majority Whip Tom Emmer, and numerous other great Republican leaders and congressmen and senators who are here, who frankly spent a long time in Washington getting this thing to go away. I also want to thank the broad coalition of Americans that stood with us in this fight to reopen government, including the Teamsters, the American Federation of Government Employees, the Fraternal Order of Police, AMVETS, the National Small Business Association, the American Farm Bureau, the American Trucking Association. These are all incredible patriots. The Airlines for America, the Allied Pilots Association, the National Air Traffic Controllers Association, and many others, unions and non-unions. Over the past 7 weeks, the Democrats' shutdown has inflicted massive harm. They caused 20,000 flights to be canceled or delayed. They departed so many times, so late. People were hurt so badly. Nobody's ever seen anything like this one. This was a no-brainer. This was an easy extension. But they didn't want to do it the easy way. They had to do it the hard way. And they look very bad, the Democrats do. They deprived more than 1 million government workers from their paychecks and cut off food stamp benefits for millions and millions more Americans in need. They caused tens of thousands of federal contractors and small businesses to go unpaid, and the total effect of the damage their antics caused will take weeks and probably months to really calculate accurately, including the serious harm that they did to our economy and to people and to families. So I just want to tell the American people, you should not forget this. When we come up to midterms and other things, don't forget what they've done to our country. I also want to call for a termination to the filibuster so that this can never happen again. If we had the filibuster terminated, this would never happen again.
Okay, so I want to pause it here because I think we're already getting questions in the chat about how the Republicans haven't yet terminated the filibuster. I want to ask Barbara and Susan, what are your thoughts about terminating the filibuster? Is it actually necessary to terminate the filibuster to get the rest of Trump's agenda?
Come on.
There you go.
Yeah. I think he's absolutely correct. I mean, the problem that you have is 60 votes. We don't have 60 votes in the Senate. It's very, very closely aligned. That's the problem that we actually have a mandate to solve in the coming midterms. We have to solve this in terms of electing people who actually support the president's agenda. That is the issue. The filibuster is just the mechanical way that a lot of Republicans who do not support Donald Trump are allowed to hide in the US Senate around the theory that, we'll never get 60 votes because we can't get the Democrats to agree. Now, what happened with the shutdown, in my view, was very, very interesting. Basically you had a bunch of Democrats who aren't up for re-election, who are retiring, and who also have, for the most part, a pedigree of having been state governors and actually are capable of acting in a bipartisan way in terms of the nation. But what the filibuster is doing right now is it's a camouflage, a blanket for all of the rhinos in the Senate not to actually actively figure out how the hell we're going to get this agenda passed on behalf of the American people. So that's what I'd say about it.
Yeah, and I just add one other thing, which is, there used to be a lot of structures and rules and other things to, make the Senate kind of the last backstop in terms of very reasoned, sober discussion and so on. Well, we're not in that world anymore. I mean, all you have right now is the equivalent of a British parliamentary system where the Democrats vote by party. And, if they're told, and we see this in many state legislatures, like the one I'm in Michigan, it doesn't matter whether an individual member might personally disagree with what the Democratic leadership is doing. They are being whipped into line to vote in one way to block Donald Trump. So, in that kind of environment, the only way out is to get rid of the filibuster.
Thank you very much. I'm just going to contrasting opinion. Do not get rid of the filibuster. The Dems would have no qualms about removing the First and Second Amendment and force us into socialism. So just as my rebuttal to this is that, Glenn, they're going to do it anyway.
Yeah, removing the filibuster does not get rid of a constitutional amendment. That is a much larger fight and a much longer process. So, yeah, the Dems are going to do it. And if they get back in power, they're going to do crappy things. But one of the things they can't do with a snap of a finger is change the Constitution. That is a tougher process.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we're going to continue here. Yeah, the signing last night was not very long. We're about almost a third of the way through.
And don't forget, we have another date coming up in the not too distant future. We can never let this happen again, and we should be able to pass really great legislation. So I say terminate the filibuster, because, by the way, the Democrats will do it immediately if they ever assumed office, which hopefully they won't. Today we had the highest stock market price ever in all of the different markets. We set a record. It's the 48th time in the 9 months that I've been in office that we had this record set. So think of that, 48 times. We had a record set, but today is the highest of them all. We're going to break new grounds. Nobody would have thought. I have with us not only the great political leaders, but the great business leaders of our country. They're standing right behind me and right really alongside of me. And if we would have told them a year ago that we'd be having stock prices this high, none of them, in fact, I just asked them that question, none of them would have believed it. And that inures to jobs and, very importantly, to 401ks, which have also set a record today, a record high for the people that have 401ks. And also, I want to thank Walmart, because they came up with a fantastic study. It was the cost of Thanksgiving coming up and the cost of Thanksgiving from a year ago under Sleepy Joe Biden, and we're 25% lower this year than we were a year ago. And it's a very inclusive report, so I want to thank Walmart. They've done it for many years, but we believe in that, and we believe in that company. I want to also thank the 8 Senate Democrats who finally did the right thing in voting to end this craziness, this madness, but unfortunately the vast majority of congressional Democrats.
Okay, I'm going to pause here, because I think one of those Senate Democrats was actually John Fetterman, who actually sided to move this process out of the Senate and back into the House. Right? Does anyone know anything more about those the Senate Democrats who actually sided with Trump? I think Fetterman's probably going to switch to Republican Party very soon.
You're muted, Barbara.
Happy for millions of Americans.
I think I already answered that question, Adam.
Americans to suffer. They really did suffer too. And the Democrats admitted, they said, well, no, we finally have a point. Even though people have to suffer, we finally have a point, and that didn't work out too well for them. But they really went out and they could appease the fringe benefits of their far-left base.
Adam, actually,
but that didn't work out, because now their far-left base is angrier than ever before.
Somebody in the chat said, telling people that things are cheaper when they're not. And I think that's really, really important, because it is a mixed bag out there. I mean, to simply say that people are making ends meet is not going to fly. Now, I think we have to be very clinical. Where Trump has been able to impact prices, like, how about eggs? I just paid $1.99 for a dozen eggs, which is 1/5 of what I paid under Joe Biden. How about gasoline? Unless you're in a crazy state like California, where I'm paying I'm in Michigan, where I paid $2.40 this week for gasoline. Although I'm going to be paying 19 cents more thanks to our crazy state legislature and some new tax next January. But in the areas where Trump hasn't been able to intervene, and I know Scott Bessent just announced, okay, we're going to have to deal with imports where we can't grow them here. We can't grow coffee here. We can't grow bananas here. So yeah, there's a room for then saying, okay, if we can't produce it, if we can't grow it here, then yeah, we're going to negotiate with countries and begin to bring these things down. Look at what Trump is doing on healthcare. We'll probably get into that more in terms of bringing drug prices down and so on. So it's, it is the case. And I think we and Republicans are wrong if they simply say, oh yeah, we've brought the cost of inflation down, the amount of inflation down, and we have, but we've brought it down from a very high rate. And it's got a long way to go before a lot of things are still affordable. But that is what Trump is committed to in terms of reshoring, rebuilding, and restructuring the US economy so that we are producers here and people have good paying jobs so that they can have one income, raise a family. So I wanted to acknowledge that because, it's not like there aren't, somebody just said, millions of homeless people. It's not like there's not a lot of homeless people. Now, some are the wreckage of the drug trade, and you couldn't get them off the streets if you offered them, a cot and a hot meal. But there are a lot of people out there who are not making ends meet. And I think if people listen carefully, especially to Bessent, to J.D. Vance and others, and recognize this is what this administration is committed to doing. And in some areas where they've had the ability to immediately affect prices, they have come through. But the rest of this is a little bit longer range. And I do want to be cognizant of that and not just brush off the idea that everybody's doing fine out there.
The other topic that we're going to address is healthcare, right? And he actually talks about his healthcare savings accounts in a few seconds here.
We actually elected a mayor of New York City who happens to be a communist. When was that going to happen? Remember, I said all the time during my campaign, we will never be a socialist country, and that's right. We turned out to have a communist in New York City, and if you look at his views, those are the views of a communist, not a socialist. So this is no way to run a country. I hope we can all agree that the government should never be shut down again, end the filibuster, terminate the filibuster. It'll never happen again. So with my signature, the federal government will now resume normal operations, and my administration and our partners in Congress will continue our work to lower the cost of living, restore public safety, grow our economy, and make America affordable again for all Americans. Again, costs are way down. Energy is way down. Gasoline is at $2.50 a gallon versus $4.70 for the Democrats. And we think we're going to hit pretty close to $2 a gallon. That's like a really massive tax cut. It's the equivalent of that. And speaking of tax cuts, our great, big, beautiful bill is giving everybody in our economy, middle income workers, low income, everybody, the biggest tax cut in the history of our country. And it's no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, and very importantly, no tax on overtime. You work overtime, there's no tax. That's among the things that add up to the biggest tax cut in history. One other thing, you hear about rich people with deductions. Well, when you buy your car and you borrow money, you're allowed to now deduct the interest on that loan. So you can take that interest deduction and what you can take is that interest payment and deduct it for income tax purposes. That's a tremendous tax cut right there. But it all includes fixing the healthcare system that Democrats broke with the disaster known as Obamacare. Obamacare was a disaster from day one. It's done nothing but go up. And if you remember President Barack Hussein Obama, when he came up with this crazy idea, he said everything's going to be great. Rates are going to go down. Payments are going to go down. Everything's going to go down. It went the exact opposite, with the biggest increase of healthcare in any country. It's a disaster. And I'm calling today for insurance companies not to be paid, but for the money, this massive amount of money, to be paid directly to the people of our country so that they can buy their own health care, which will be far better and far less expensive than.
Okay, this is the part that I really wanted to get to. This new health insurance, this health plan, personal health plan, instead of reimbursing the health insurance companies, he would be giving that money more directly to the American people to spend on healthcare. Barbara and Susan, what are your thoughts on this? Because I think this is the revolutionary, this right here could be the revolutionary new change, or part of the revolutionary new change for American healthcare.
I think it's part of it. I don't think it's all of it. Basically what we have under Obamacare is financialization throughout the entire healthcare system. Hospitals, medical practices that used to be a doctor having a direct relationship with a patient. Now you can't really find very many doctors who aren't associated with mega types of hospital groups or what have you. And having a personal doctor is very difficult because everybody goes into specialization because that's where they can make money. And they can't make money on being the generalist who just sees people and tries to figure out what's wrong with them. That was totally wiped out under Obamacare. So the administration is attacking this in several different ways. The primary cost, which actually goes into Medicare and Medicaid, the two entitlements, which everybody complains about on the Republican side, basically what's going on with that is if you take the drugs out of that, the massive amount that Medicare and Medicaid reimburses drug companies, and have what Trump has called most favored nation treatment of drugs, i.e. where the drugs are sold overseas at pennies to the dollar of what Americans pay for them here, that's going to completely wipe out a whole cost factor affecting how health is actually done. This particular thing will obviously needs to have very well-educated consumers to figure out what they're going to do with the money that's actually put into health savings account. But we also have a big problem with doctors and nurses. We don't have enough of them, and we're not graduating a whole lot of them sufficient to meet the needs of this population. So the big labor side of healthcare is sort of being crazily treated by, nurse practitioners, lower level employees coming in to actually serve as the doctor because we don't have enough doctors. All right. So Trump is attacking all of that, and he's attacking it really from the top. With Maha now taking over the key government institutions and looking for another fundamental, which is we're chronically ill in this country. And that is really crazy, compared to, say, the Japanese or any of these other cultures. We're dying for the first time in our nation's history much younger than all of these other nations. Why is that? Well, why are we chronically ill at a level which is much greater than any other nation on the face of the earth at this point? That's where the money goes. So the question is, let's look at that. Let's make the discoveries which are necessary to solve that. And let's get out of treating systems and actually symptoms and actually treat the causes fundamentally by the types of discoveries which used to be made all the time. When you think about it, you used to hear about a new discovery, a new drug that actually worked, say, 40 or 50 years ago. Now you don't hear about any of that. You get advertisements on TV to buy all sorts of drugs for all sorts of symptoms. And Lord knows on top of that, because the medical establishment is so terrible, now you have this other kind of underground movement of holistic practitioners. I have no clue whether any of this is right or wrong because I'm not trained in fundamentals of healthcare. But that's the problem, and it's a big, big problem, which this is a partial solution for.
Yeah, and I want to take it back one step further because I think it's going to take an even bigger revolution, and maybe not immediately. But this whole thing goes back to the establishment of HMOs, health maintenance organizations, in 1972, which was part of the financier elite beginning the process of financializing everything, where the purpose of healthcare was no longer healthcare. The purpose of healthcare was an income stream to feed big pharma and to feed the insurance companies. As Barbara referenced, we used to have a system prior to 1972 where the principal parties were the doctor and the patient. And you had health insurance like you had car insurance or, house insurance. You went out, you got insured, and if you got sick, then your insurance covered it. But your insurance company did not tell your doctor what they could or could not do. And, one of the reasons people are not entering the medical field is people who seriously want to treat people as doctors know that in this existing system, they're not going to be able to do it. They're going to spend half their time figuring out what code the HMO demands for them to look at a ingrown toenail, and then they're going to find out they can't treat it. So I think there's a bigger revolution somewhere along the line. It's not quite on the scale of the Federal Reserve in the sense of these are going to take a very different Congress to be able to accomplish these kinds of things. But I think we have to keep that in mind as we go down the road.
Thank you very much, Barbara and Susan. If you're just tuning in, thank you very much. I was playing back, we're almost all the way through. I was playing back the Trump signing the bill to end the government shutdown. This video we were watching here was literally just 13 hours ago. So we're going to watch the end of it here. Quick shout out here to Amy. Amy, thank you very much for the super chat. We really appreciate the support. Thank you for coming back. I'm going to get to the question and answer session in a moment. We're going to finish this up here because I want people to actually see what Trump said last night and to get our comments on it. So I'm just going to finish this up here.
The disaster known as Obamacare, and I've had, I think, great support. I've even had Democrat support. So we want the money that would be going to the insurance company, which is hundreds of billions of dollars. Their stock prices have gone up by 1,000% in many cases, 1,000% over a short period of time, because our country stupidly pays them so much money with this Obamacare scandal. So I want the money to go directly to you, the people. And you'll go out and you'll buy your own health insurance and you'll negotiate different plans and you'll get much better insurance and you will be an entrepreneur for yourself. So I'm always willing to work with anyone, including the other party. We'll work on something having to do with healthcare. We can do a lot better. We can do great. So much money is involved and we're willing to pay so much money to the people. So we're going to pay a lot of money to the people. They're going to go out and buy their own healthcare. And we're going to forget this Obamacare madness. So with all of that, I just want to tell you the country has never been in better shape. We went through this short-term disaster with the Democrats because they thought it would be good politically. And it's an honor now to sign this incredible bill and get our country working again. Thank you.
Okay, and the press got really pissed after that because he took no questions. You could hear somebody trying to shout an Epstein question to him, but he didn't even take it. Okay, so I'm going to begin now to take the question. We're going to begin the question and answer session. These questions here that I'm going to show on screen have come from our newsletter audience. If you've been tuning in for a while and like what we present here, I urge you to get just a quick shout out to the newsletter. I urge you to get our free newsletter. You can go to the link right below. You can search the web for Promethean Action. Join our email list. I send out the link to ask questions several times a week in the emails, and that's where these questions come from. So the first one I think here is a very good one. Whoops. There we go. I have a friend who was joking about this. We were joking about this yesterday, but the $2,000 a month tariff checks. So is Trump serious about issuing a $2,000 tariff check to middle and low income Americans? If so, how do you apply and when? David, thank you very much for the question. I don't think any of us know how and when yet, but I'd like to open it up to Barbara and Susan.
Yeah, I think he's trying to take the chill off the popular opinions out there about tariffs, quite frankly. With the Supreme Court considering all of the tariffs at this point, the level of understanding of most people out there about tariffs has been really screwed up by the media, by the attacks on them, and by, the overall kind of framework that basically, for months now, people have been fed the line that all of the pain you're feeling about affordability is because of Trump's tariffs. So I think he's very serious about issuing this to middle and low income Americans. What I had heard about it is everybody who makes less than $100,000 a year would be eligible to get this check. And the answer is, I think he's dead serious about it. So we'll hear more about it. I think that's the reason for it in many respects. It's to cause a kind of curiosity factor to occur in the population of why am I getting this $2,000 check? Where did it come from? And where it comes from is the fact that we've taken in trillions of dollars because of the tariff policy. And if you know your American history, as Trump does, tariffs used to be how the country actually sustained itself. When we didn't have an income tax. That was basically, what McKinley did and the way he used them. And it is in history kind of the book which Trump is following, not just to create, all of this money coming in, but to fundamentally change the trade relationships in the entire world so that Americans don't get screwed anymore in terms of our ability to market and sell what we make in a productive economy to other countries. And that's what Trump is drastically changing at the same time as he's protecting all of the new industries we're setting up and dragging the supply chain, which Wall Street sent completely overseas beginning in the 1970s, most particularly in 1990s forward. So that's what I think it's all about, but it's a much bigger issue, I think, than just getting that check. It's a discussion point, big time.
All right, thank you. Next questions are going to be on the elections from the last week. First one's from Edward. In regards to the midweek update, Republicans lost because they abandoned Trump's economic nationalism. Were there any races where it was emphasized that were successful, or were there just no emphasis at all placed on it? Thank you, Edward. I'm going to take the next one here. Great show, learning a lot. Gene Decoded recommended your show, and I am so thankful. My question is, don't you think New Jersey elections were rigged based on bomb threats in Republican districts? 500,000 new citizens since 2021. Committeeman reported he got a blast message from the state Democrats to vote for the Democratic candidate at a location that was not his polling place. Not to mention the illegals already in our sanctuary state. Thank you for your question and comment, Linda. And this one here, also on the elections. While I had some hope several of the states and cities might flip, I do not see it as an electoral wipeout. New York has not been Republican in 40 years, New Jersey in 38, and VA in 35 years. Manhattan has done something surpassingly stupid. Often there are silver linings. Let them see the consequences. I ought to see that the pendulum swing in 2026. So why do you see it as a catastrophe? Why do you see the elections last week as a catastrophe? Are you expecting Trump to become a lame duck in 2026 if any DC seats change? Thank you, Annie, for your question and comment.
Well, I'll take those in order. In terms of the first one, I'm not aware of anybody who seriously went out and campaigned on Trump's economic nationalism. And that, to me, is the most fundamental question. in terms of, I mean, maybe there was somebody at some local level that I'm not aware of. And if anybody is, please let me know because we'd like to talk to them. But, you know, from the standpoint of the major Virginia, New Jersey races and so on, no. On the second question, yeah, there's a lot of shenanigans that they will play. And you cited some of them. I don't think they were decisive in this campaign. I think people always have to come back to 2024. We made it too big to rig. How did we make it too big to rig? We brought new layers of the population. Donald Trump brought new layers of the population over to vote for him. Blue-collar workers, Muslim Arab Americans here in Michigan, young people, Hispanics, and they largely came over and voted for him on the bread and butter economic issues. If you do not put those issues at the top of the ticket, you know, you are going to lose those people. And the people who did not turn out in New Jersey and Virginia were precisely those swing voters and independents. You know, and if we don't concentrate and focus on getting Trump's economic message out to those layers, the pendulum is not going to swing. Yeah, the Republicans and the MAGA and so on will go out and vote. It is the swing. It's the independents. It's the former Democrats who are saying, I've had it with this batshit crazy Democratic Party, but I have to have something to vote for. Because if I don't have something to vote for, I ain't just going to come out and vote. And that's what's going to happen. And that's what happened in 2025. In terms of the last question that was asked, in terms of, well, these are blue states anyway. Well, that's true. But you have to really, if you're seriously fighting a war, you have to go and assess what happened in the last battle and see, did you gain ground or did you lose ground? Whether you won or not. Virginia had a Republican governor in the last go round. So don't just say it was blue. Republicans had some kind of strategy in the previous election. And again, if you look at it much more granularly, we lost ground. We lost those independent and blue collar and swing voters and what you could call soft Republicans or soft Democrats who voted for Donald Trump. Don't just wave your hands and say, oh, well, these were blue states anyway. Look at what actually happened, and you will see that it's giving us a very clear pathway by which, on which we have to walk if we are going to win 2026.
Barbara, any comment? No? Okay. Going to take a quick question here before we move on to the next one. First, I do want to come back to Amy. I don't know exactly the whole convenient processed foods. I read that the whole convenient processed foods were a part of the communist plan for us by the UK. Barbara and Susan, do you know anything about this convenient processed foods?
Oh, she's talking about processed foods, which the fundamental theory of Maha is that's what's making us sick. You know, and that is, you know, got some validity to it. I don't know, you know, the general plan from the UK is essentially to, you know, subjugate this country. And, you know, I'm not sure that processed foods are anything but, you know, a con game run by really quite immoral and stupid corporations. I mean, if you look at the processed food, if you look at the food industry, you'll discover huge multinational corporations actually involved in you know, the business of you know, creating these types of foods. You know, not through normal chemistry, but by kind of crazy processes that don't cost a lot of money. So that's what I think is the main culprit here is big ag and big health. And, you know, we've got to take that apart.
Thank you, Barbara. Thank you, Amy, for your support and for joining us every week. We really appreciate it. Okay, I also want to take just some comments here. Peter, first name, will a health savings setup be $2,000 only to be used for medical products and services? Peter, I don't think any of us know the question to that just yet. But I just wanted to say, yes, believe me, this is on everyone's mind. My Obamacare, because unfortunately I'm on Obamacare. My Obamacare here in Virginia went up $60 this year. So everyone, especially if you're on Obamacare, everyone is getting sick of it. And it's terrible because if let's say you take part of the Obamacare subsidy, which is what the shutdown was over, dude, that's like doing your taxes twice. If you take that subsidy and your taxes don't align, oh my gosh, that's such a pain in the butt. So it even sucks more if you're a poor person having to basically do your taxes twice for your Obamacare. So yeah, I don't think anyone knows yet. We're all waiting, just like you are. I just want to say, Jason, I think as a younger person, I agree with you too. I don't have a 401k. Bragging about the stock market shows you how out of touch they are with the real people. Yes, I have to agree with that. It is very dangerous when Trump talks nothing about, look, the stock market's going up and up. Yet for people, I heard yesterday a statistic that 10% of the US population owns 90% of the stock market.
But let me add something there, because that's something that Scott Bessent addresses all the time. And that's why I said, listen to the messaging of this whole administration. Bessent addresses that, makes clear that what Trump is trying to do is to lift up Main Street and the working class. That's what the tariffs are intended to do, bring back the good paying jobs. So again, when you look at the array of what this administration is trying to do, and you listen to the messaging of people like I think Bessent and Vance are among the best in getting this across. Stephen Miller isn't bad. There's a different message out there, and it's what they're actually trying to do in terms of making a revolution in the economy, returning us to being economically sovereign and not, as Trump said recently, a subject nation. That's the problem. So, always take stock of what is their entire game plan, and recognize that, unfortunately, it took us 40, 50, 60 years to be dragged down to the bottom of the barrel. And it's probably going to take a little bit more than 10 months to get us back up to the top again.
I just want to add, I think, unfortunately, the way most people think about the economy, and Trump as a marketer is probably addressing this quite consciously, is all you hear about in terms of measurements is the stock market. Think about how many times a day do you get, starting in the morning, and then when the close comes, that's all you hear about how you're supposed to measure any type of economic progress. That's what he's feeding into. But the real story here is his main thrust is to increase the wages of workers, of hourly workers. And the idea is that if we can drive wages up through good paying jobs, the goal is to completely outpace inflation in terms of affordability by actually, having high wage jobs in an economy which is not a service economy. That's where, if you look at the inflation, that's where a lot of the inflation is coming from, is from the services sector of the economy, and not the productive end of the economy, which Trump is now recreating. So that's what I would just add as an answer to that.
Thank you very much. Okay, if you've been tuning in and like what we've been talking about and like our show, please hit the like button real quick. It helps our distribution on YouTube. And also, if you're not already, please subscribe, hit the bell icon. We do 3 political updates a week. Our next one's going to be on Saturday. So hit the subscribe button so we can stay in contact with you. All right, so I'm going to go to the next question here. What is the messaging for the current hot topic of the day, healthcare reform? The ACA is expected to rebalance premiums due to the COVID subsidy sunset very soon. I don't know about that. We need to have a well thought out response as to what the administration intends to do. Personally, I believe the public needs to be given the grown-ups version of reality. This needs to be illustrated through graphs and charts as much as articulated. And the White House press office needs to start ramping up its media campaign to counter the PSYOP operations of negative disinformation sent on this administration by the media. Thank you very much, Paul, for your comment.
Well, I think Barbara and I have sort of addressed the larger question in terms of how big this healthcare reform question is, but I agree with you, Paul. I think there needs to be a much more aggressive campaign taken out to the American people. Take what Trump said about the enormous profits that the insurance companies are making. And, isn't there a better way to do this? And message that, message that, message that.
Yeah, and I think this goes right to the heart of the next question here. Since America has relied on craftsmanship and the skill of foreign countries, what is the plan proposed to train American people in the skills we need to be successful? Thank you very much, Yolanda. I think this is probably one of the biggest challenges we face as a nation moving forward.
Well, again, I think this is a question where we have to help with the messaging. If you look at what the Trump administration has done in terms of initiatives for skilled trades training, Trump has written an executive order that we need to get 1 million skilled trade jobs spun up here in the United States. They already have programs in place where hundreds of thousands of people are being trained. I just saw another report from Ford CEO Jim Farley, who's very much focused on this. Also, Mike Rowe, the dirty jobs guy. There are hundreds of thousands of good paying skilled jobs that we have a deficit in. So we have to absolutely match that. And again, that's also sort of a cultural question. And a lot of people are starting to rethink, whether it's somebody coming out of high school or their parents. Is a 4-year degree in DEI studies worth being $100,000 in debt and then going to work as an Uber driver? Or is there another pathway? And I think there's going to be as we see the demand for these jobs, the construction jobs, the skilled trade jobs, and so on, begin to build up as we reshore. Because remember, if you're starting up construction in the United States, the first wave is going to be construction jobs. But the assembly line, the manufacturing jobs, they may still be a year out, hopefully a little bit less, so that we can begin to feel some of this in time of the midterms. And then the deficits that we have are going to be, people are going to see how absolutely enormous they are. This administration is on it. They are committed to it. The labor secretary has been to, I believe, every single state already. She told at an event I was at a couple months ago, she said, she's been to Michigan more than any other state to begin to address these questions and to work with trade unions and companies. And I think people might remember just a couple of weeks ago, Home Depot announced a major program to basically like a scholarship program to provide people with basic skills training so that they can go out and begin to do actual things, building stuff.
Thank you very much, Susan and Barbara. I want to do a quick super chats here. First, I want to give a quick shout out to Tricky Vicky. Thank you very much for the super chat. I think maybe Barbara would have some thoughts on this. Isn't the Bar Association a covertly British operation that has its tentacles in our justice system? The Bar Association is not majority against Trump, but totally 100% anti-Trump. Thank you very much, Tricky, for your support. Barbara, any questions, comments?
Well, the Bar Association sets the terms for lawyers in terms of professional standards, other things, that happen with the legal profession. It's traditionally been an absolutely establishment type of operation. And I don't necessarily think it's the biggest British operation in terms of the bar. I think the biggest British operation was to go after lawyers directly who, represented Trump in any kind of way. And basically drive them out of practice by, bringing bar complaints, since the bar deals with legal ethics, against them to essentially get them out of practice. And that created a whole situation where we're still going through right now. Where are we going to get the lawyers to take the staff positions at the Justice Department to actually do the types of things which Trump would like the Justice Department to do? They're trying to hire as many people as possible now, but you've got to realize, if you take Obama and you add, Trump to that, along with Biden, what do you get in terms of where lawyers actually sit in the Justice Department if they were working, under these previous regimes? They had to fire a whole lot of people. These people are very skilled. And now, what they're trying to do is restaff the whole thing. Now, people get very anxious when they say, oh, I don't see anybody in cuffs yet. Basically, it's all screwed up. Well, what sense do you make of this situation, just which I know very well, in the Eastern District of Virginia, where the Comey indictment basically required the president to send Lindsay Halligan, who had never tried a criminal case in her life, into the Eastern District to go before a grand jury and actually present the evidence against Comey, which she did successfully because she's a very bright person. But that office is, composed of all of the people who the Justice Department basically tried to get rid of because of their involvement with the deep state. So these are big, 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 types of problems which have to get solved, and people don't quite look at the actual mechanics of how something gets done to actually bring a criminal case. It requires a lot of thinking. It requires a lot of strategy. It requires a lot of manpower. And she couldn't even get a paralegal from that office to actually help her with the Comey indictment. She's got to win that. We have to win that. It's going to be very difficult. But, the thing got done, but is done under very, very compromised circumstances. And I think that applies to a lot of the things that people are upset about.
Yes, and just quickly, Barbara, she had a follow-up here. I hate the fact that our legislature is mostly lawyers and they practice legalese language, and the Bar Association makes sure they are anti-America first, since that is a British infiltration of America. Again, thank you very much, Vicky. We appreciate your comments. Barbara, any last final comments on this?
If you really want to look at the British infiltration of law, please look at the common law. All right, that's where it starts, as opposed to the Constitution and other things. And the Bar Association, I don't think, is the most important aspect of that entire subversion. So that's what I say about that.
Thank you, Barbara.
Adam, can I give a shout out to M. Graulau, who's got a great slogan for us? Don't get mad, get even by watching Promethean action. Yeah.
This one?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. We appreciate the kind word.
That's our mental health recommendation for the day.
Thank you. Okay, but I want to first off say thank you everyone on x.com for tuning in. I'm getting more comments here. I can see your comments on x.com. I'm going to be taking a question and a comment from X in just a few moments, but I want to get to this other generous super chat. Stefano, thank you for joining us. Thank you for the very generous super chat. Appreciate your reporting. Excellent. How do you see cryptocurrency relative to this British Empire versus MAGA USA? So I just want to say one quick thing on it. I do realize that the technology of blockchain technology is actually very important. I especially when it comes to transactions, verifying transactions, and being able to actually build a world where you can basically, yes, for more financial freedom. I agree, cryptocurrency is so important, but how do you guys, Barbara and Susan, how do you guys see cryptocurrency as we move forward, especially in Trump's movement? Because he has done a bunch of things with cryptocurrency, some of which are quite controversial.
I can't claim to really understand it. I think that, you know, basically pegging it to the dollar is very wise. But the rest of it, in many respects, I suspect may have some problems in it. But I don't have enough of an understanding of the overall scope of this at this point in terms of the financial system to be able to honestly give you a real firm answer. We're watching it, looking at it, trying to understand how it's moving, and have not been totally successful in accomplishing that mission.
The blockchain technology is so general, and they just use it for so many different instruments that it's really hard to generalize over the entire domain of crypto. Because as Barbara mentioned, yes, they have these crypto products where they peg the value of the product directly to the value of the dollar. They've all it's literally like a whole zoo of different things. So it's very hard to say what the role of the blockchain is going to be moving forward. It clearly has some benefits for the world, especially in the idea of like not allowing the central banks just to print infinite amounts of money. We're going to have some idea about how much they are printing. Well, so that's what I think. Susan,
yeah, I would just say ultimately, you know, a lot of these questions would get resolved if you got rid of central banking and you returned to national banking. So, you know, it is a very difficult question to answer because you would have one answer in the world of central banking, and then you would have another answer in terms of how it might be used in the world of national banking. And that's where I think we really have to start.
Thank you. I hope we somewhat answered your question, Stefano. Thank you very much for the super chat. Okay, and again, thank you very much, Ura, another one of our frequent viewers. Thank you very much for tuning in every week. Quick comment here. Hey guys, you made this old devil dog a warrior again. And these podcast wackos like Owens and Carlson and the Nazi guy Fuentes with the Latin last name seems to be determined to disrupt our president's plans for us. Barbara, Susan, thoughts on that? Because Barbara, especially you, I know you really used to like Tucker Carlson a lot. And I'm sure it's been even kind of tough for you to see him take these like really kind of crazy positions increasingly.
Well, he served a very useful role at a certain point in time. He still could serve a very useful role. I don't think he's in the same camp as Nick Fuentes or Candace Owens, although he's definitely got some crazy ideas. He's always had some crazy ideas. He actually believes in demons and all this other stuff. So I think that Trump is under such a sustained attack right now that it reminds me in many respects of Russiagate. You know, you've got the Epstein stuff, which continues to be, you know, basically sent out to get people completely screwball. And they ask, well, how come Trump says this is a hoax? Well, he's trying to basically educate people on fundamental economics. And, you know, if his term is consumed by these social wedge issues, rather than successfully, you know, really educating the public on an economy which works and which is affordable and which is progressive, that's why he gets so frustrated with it. Just think about, you know, how many times has his sex life from an entire period been the defining issue which people are consumed by for hours and hours and hours at a time. E. Jane Carroll, that whole nonsense, all of this stuff. And he's trying to put together an economy and a world which works. So this is like a concerted attack at this point around the idea that the people around him are all a bunch of incompetents, particularly in the FBI. Now, when you start with what I just said, the effort to bring down the deep state, which, you know, is going on, and the deep state knows it, but the internet doesn't know it very well at this point, and is essentially all involved in saying to you, well, he's failed because, John Brennan is still running around, all right? And Barack Obama hasn't been brought before a firing squad yet, and all of this other stuff that people see on the internet and become somewhat obsessed by. But what will determine the midterms, and the harder part of all of this, is how do we educate the American people, particularly young people who have never lived in a productive economy. They have never lived, with the idea that they could actually ever buy a house and move out of the basements that they actually live in. They have never lived with the idea that it's really a good idea, as Charlie Cook used to say, to have more kids than you can possibly afford, because you can basically figure it out in a productive economy how to solve that problem. These are the hard questions. It's like I keep coming back to Thomas Paine's famous opening line. These are the times that try men's souls. We've got to somehow introduce these ideas to this younger population in particular, who, Bob Ingram wrote a wonderful piece, which is up on our website, about the Erie Canal. And he compared it to all other times in history where men and women have put together something in their imagination that they didn't know if it was ever going to work or not. And they figured it out along the way, actually, how to do that. And when, one of our people in Michigan presented this to one of the younger Republicans, he said, this is really incredible, but could we ever do this? And that's exactly the problem at this point. And that's what we've got to keep focused on.
Thank you very much, Barbara. If you're just tuning in, please hit the like button when you come in. It helps us reach a greater audience on YouTube. If you're not yet already, please subscribe to the channel. We're going to be doing, so we do 3 political updates a week on Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday. This is our Thursday live show, so we really do 4 shows a week. We're trying to do more. Please subscribe to our channel, hit the bell notification icon. Our next political update is going to be from Barbara on this Saturday. So subscribe and you'll get a notification. Okay, I'm going to move to the next question here from our email newsletter. These questions are coming from our email newsletter subscribers. Check the link in the description if you want to get our email newsletter. This next question is from Ken. What would be the implications of Trump declaring an insurrection? And why do you feel that he hasn't declared one yet? It's obvious that the very weak Republican majority in the Senate is not going to end the filibuster. Using the Insurrection Act will give Trump unlimited power for as long as he requires it. He could fix our elections, deport every illegal, etc. The Constitution allows him the use of this power unfettered. I love you 3. Your show is amazing. Thank you for spreading the truth. Thank you very much, Ken, for your kind words. I open the floor to Barbara and Susan.
Well, I think, like Abraham Lincoln, Trump is trying to figure out a way through the present crisis without fully going to the Insurrection Act, which would be, kind of a final thing, saying we're not coming back from this. We have to take and use the most fundamental emergency power. He wants to try and make the institutions of the Constitution actually work. And I don't think he's doing a terribly bad job of that. There are lots of things going on in Democrat-controlled areas where you see the situation where it crosses your mind, holy cow, we're almost in a civil war here. And so I agree with the sentiment, Ken, but I think it would probably, the way Trump is calculating it, it probably would cause such a huge backlash at this point in terms of our overall situation in the Republic that he's trying to see if we can't do this through other ways at this point in time. I don't think he would ever rule that out necessarily, but I don't think right now he sees it as an irresolvable situation. And let me point out something. It really does depend on the citizens out there. Trump has a unique listening post in terms of what the country wants and needs. And they let him know, but it requires people to rise up. It's the old, situation from Shakespeare's Hamlet, where it said, the fault is not in the stars. It's because we think of ourselves as underlings. We've got to actually take control of the country at this point in terms of steering the direction. Why would the filibuster not work if you actually think about it? It won't work because you got crap in the Senate, which we somehow have to see if we can change. And that if the people rise up, you're going to see that kind of change, just like you saw the momentum in the first part of the Trump administration because of the November election and the resounding thing the people actually delivered as a message. So that's the other qualification I would put on that question.
Thank you, Barbara. Thank you, everyone. Also, everyone, I see more comments coming in from x.com. I am going to take a few of you guys' questions and comments. But this next question, I think, is one that Susan wanted, and I think it's also a good one that people are thinking about. Can you give me a list of the individual sources of the $20 trillion that Trump has secured in manufacturing investments for the United States? Thank you, Robert, for your question. And I think we have something for you to answer this.
Well, a couple of things. First, the general breakdown of the immediate announced amounts. The biggest, I think, so far is UAE, which is 1.4 trillion, Qatar 1.2 trillion, Japan 1 trillion, Saudi Arabia 600 billion, South Korea 450 billion, India 500 billion, EU, we even squeezed out of EU firms 600 billion, and then Bahrain 17 billion, and a lot of others that are not yet actually announced. So I know that doesn't add up to 17, but that's what is concretized. But what I do want to do is show people where this stuff is actually going. And we're going to be trying to figure out how to make this a kind of live resource where people can see this is the money which is already committed. Now, a lot of this stuff in the pipeline is not yet tied to a project. What we're about to show you, can you make that a little bigger, Adam? Is where it's going. So North Carolina so far is the biggest recipient of concrete investments, close to 82 billion, 2,300 jobs. But look at Michigan. A lot of this is for automotive upgrades and so on. And I will mention in terms of Michigan, you're seeing a kind of recalibration because now that Trump has pulled the plug on the whole EV green scam, a lot of the companies are shutting down their battery plants. Ford, I think, is on the verge of canceling the F-150 Lightning, which is a completely insane idea, a big honking electric pickup truck, which can't pull anything because it doesn't have enough oomph. So they're shifting back to, ICEs and so on. But that's just page one. I'm not going to go through all of these things, but here's page two, which includes, most states. Some of this is manufacturing. Some of it is raw materials. A lot of it is aerospace. A lot of it is energy. Actually, let me back up. Pennsylvania is a big recipient of a lot of stuff, $5 billion per year going into the Philadelphia shipyards. And as I mentioned in my show last week, why didn't New Jersey Republicans, who are right next door to Philadelphia, point out to people that these are going to be permanent, well-paying jobs coming in by the thousands over the coming years? And then let's not forget our little friends in West Virginia. Anyway, that's these are figures of already committed investments. There's probably more, and then there's all the stuff that's in the pipeline where it's not yet attached to an actual investment. So this is the beginning, as Stephen Miller said yesterday, or the day before. I used it in my update yesterday. You know, we are on the verge of the biggest change in the U.S. economy. I don't know if he said in our lifetime, but in a whole lot of lifetimes, I think.
Thank you very much, Susan. Next question. Let's see here. Okay, no, let's actually, I'm gonna go and take this comment here from x.com, because I know this is a big issue on x.com and also just everywhere, especially with younger people today that are desperately searching for jobs, because the job market right now for a lot of people is 100% cooked. The layoffs keep coming, and for a lot of people in the country, the jobs aren't there. So this is a big issue right now. H-1B visas. Thank you very much, Ann from x.com. I'm tired of Trump and the cabinet and politicians say our youth aren't smart enough or that they want these jobs. So demoralizing. Barbara and Susan, your comments on this, because a lot of people are thinking the same thing right now.
Yeah, there's a figure being put out about how many of the STEM kids can't find jobs at this point. People who went into STEM and got themselves college degrees and things like, you know, computer engineering, etc. Now, you know, essentially they go and try and find a job, and automation has come into that area, so that the story which was told to people learn how to code, you know, AI is taking over a lot of those positions at this point. All right. We need, you know, and we're kicking out the Democratic labor force consisted of all of these illegals who they brought into, you know, saying essentially, we need to hire these people, and that's where the jobs are. So now we're kicking out all of those people, and you have a situation where the labor market is very much in kind of chaos at this point. I know that I looked up myself to try and find out what's going on with Silicon Valley, and you know, the answer which is given is that they're just not doing entry-level jobs. They're looking for people who have a skill set and experience already, from the standpoint of having been in the business for, you know, 4 or 5 years, or are senior people, because that's the type of labor force you're going to use in Silicon Valley because of AI and actually developing AI. So this is a big contentious issue. What do you want the H-1B visas to be? How long do you want them to be? Right now, the Trump administration, I saw a thing with Bessent yesterday where he's saying we need to train up Americans for the jobs that we're actually creating. Let's take shipbuilding, for example, which we haven't done in the United States ever since World War II. So as I understand what's going on with the, you know, Koreans, they have the most advanced shipbuilding, you know, capacities in the world at this point, and they're coming into the country to actually train up people in shipbuilding. Rare earth processing. In South Carolina last week, Bessent was visiting the new plant which is being set up, and what happened there is the Americans were sent over to Germany to be trained up by the company that actually owns the rare earth processing plant, and were brought back to the United States. That's the directionality I think we need to go to solve the problem, because we need to match skills to jobs in manufacturing, not in coding, all right, which was essentially this whole idea of the 90s, that you could just design things here and the manufacturing could be done in China or India or what have you. that never works for either economy. It didn't really work for either economy. You need to build those two things together for the economy of the future. Nuclear power plants, we're going to be building them, but we haven't really had them. There's a very limited group of people who actually know how to run a nuclear power plant at this point. And that's the problem. It's a matching problem. We've got to have skills. And in my humble opinion, we also need to have some significant infrastructure projects at this point announced as the best possible way to actually train people up. That's what we did in the 30s and in World War II. And that's what actually worked to get people into shape for these types of jobs, essentially where we have this mismatch because of what I would call the Obama, Clinton, Wall Street economy.
Yeah, while you were talking, Barbara, I went and found the Jim Farley comment, the CEO of Ford. He says right now there's 5,000 openings of skilled mechanics where you would be pulling in six figures. So, I mean, what you're saying in terms of this mismatch, I mean, people are upset about the H-1B visas. You know, a lot of these are very low-paying entry-level jobs. How come people aren't out there figuring out, how am I going to get an actual skill that's going to help me rebuild this country and is going to give me a real wage?
Thank you, Barbara and Susan. Okay. The next question we're going to take is another hot button issue that needs to be asked because it's on everyone's mind. Thank you, Nancy, for this question and comment. Steve Bannon just lashed out at Mark Levin and said the Republican Jewish Committee is the biggest never Trump group out there. They backed DeSantis and Nikki Haley, and only since Trump won did they cozy up to Trump to get what they wanted. Meanwhile, Tucker is exposing how the dictator Zelensky is burning down churches and repressing Christianity in Ukraine. I would love to hear Susan and Barbara's comments regarding this. It may be the British influence, but there are a lot of Jewish individuals in that mix, including Soros and people like Kolominsky, as well as Victoria Nuland. Thank you, Nancy, for your question and comment. Barbara and Susan.
This is really the neocons, and it's true. The Republican Jewish Committee, basically, if you look at the Ted Cruz operation, that's what's being talked about here in terms of who would run against whoever is put up as a candidate from the MAGA coalition in the next election. And that's who these guys are backing. Zelensky, that's kind of a different story. And he's burning down the Russian Orthodox Church, which is historically very much based in Russian culture. Many people don't understand that Vladimir Putin is not a communist in the sense that they think of communists who are generally atheists. He, is actually baptized in the Russian Orthodox Christian Church. So it's a combination of London and, essentially all of these neoconservative operations are essentially run within the intelligence community of the United States by British intelligence. And that's how I would put it.
Thank you, Barbara. Susan, any comments on that one?
Just to sort of drill down on this point, the enemy is an ideology. It's not a religion and it's not a race. The ideology is an ideology which can infect any religion and can infect any race. The ideology says man is just an animal. He only knows the world through his senses. This is the basis of British empiricism. This goes back to Aristotle. And if you only know the world through your senses, like your pet dog, you can be manipulated and controlled. And that's that. And you run your economics from the standpoint of that ideology. As Adam Smith says, you're not responsible for the consequences of your actions. You just try and make a profit or avoid a loss, and you don't think about the future. That is the image of man that the empire believes in. They just happen to think that they're better bred animals than the rest of us, so they get to rule over us. And again, that infects everything. And our conception, the conception of our founding fathers, the conception of Western Christian civilization, and the conception of many Jews and Muslims, and I'm going to drill down on that, is that man is in the image of the Creator. Now, how they worship that Creator, how the three monotheistic religions worship that Creator is different. But there is a commonality, which is that mankind is a very precious resource put here by the Creator to continue God's creation. And our ability here in the Promethean movement to sort through what is going on and not get sandbagged and not get freaked out by this and not run down a rabbit hole is because we start with that. We don't start with Jewish bad, Zionist bad, Muslim bad, this bad. And frankly, we don't start with British bad. It's the British system and the British ideology, which goes all the way back through the millennia before there was Britain and a British monarchy. We start from that fundamental standpoint. And that's how we analyze things. People, I'm sure, don't agree and still want to attach the badness to something instead of actually thinking through this ideology. And all I would say is look at our track record and look at everybody else's.
Thank you, Barbara and Susan. I want to give a quick shout out again to Paul. Thank you very much for your continuing support. Thank you for joining every week and keeping our chat a little bit more sane. So the next questions we're going to get to, again, we're going back to our email newsletter questions. We have a daily email newsletter. You can find the link is in the description of this video. You can also just search for Promethean Action. It's subscribe to our newsletter. It's right on the website. You make so many, so first, thank you, Terry. You make so many good points. However, I didn't see any constitutionally minded people running for the New York mayor's office. Mamdani got all the promotion with no one with the same viewpoint running against him. So where are the new Trumps coming from? Patriots like Charlie. We need to hear their voices so we see the choice. Thank you, Terry, for your good observations and comments. I'm going to group this one together with two more. How do we help the feckless Republicans in Congress realize they don't need to be scared of losing their elite jobs if we do the right thing for Americans and stop worrying about what the Dems think or retaliate? They hate us and already retaliate against us. They pretend to be self-righteous at the expense of the American people. Very true, Gail. Thank you very much. And third one here we're going to take. What do you recommend Republicans do to successfully message for the midterms? Thank you very much, James. And Barbara and Susan, questions and comments?
Again, I think we've talked a lot about this. No, there wasn't a sane candidate running for mayor of New York. You had Mr. COVID killer Cuomo and, Curtis Leeway, both of whom are kind of crazy. And the reason why Madami actually won is because of this issue of affordability. And that is what he addressed. It is impossible for middle class and working class people in New York to actually make ends meet. It has the biggest, divide in terms of the number of millionaires versus the number of people below the poverty line of any city in the United States. And that's pretty remarkable. So that's why he won. If you're sitting there and can't afford to have anything, having a free bus or having your rent controlled seems like a pretty good idea. And it can't. That's essentially what he presented, and why people fell for it. And we have to basically create a different vision for the economy than this kind of what I would call Democratic Party grift. It's it's the same thing as the Green New Deal and all of the other things they've actually done. I don't find them that radically different from Joe Biden's overall idea that we need to put more of the economy into services. We need to create free childcare. We need to create free elder care. We need to do all of these things so that the entire economy is nothing but services, which is really how the Green New Deal was structured. And that sort of, leads to the type of thing from the World Economic Forum, where they said, you won't own anything. You'll never own anything. You'll just be happy. You're going to be a renter for your entire life. And that's what that whole piece of stuff is all about. So messaging is critical here. It's not being done, in my humble opinion, very well by the administration at this point. If I were, running things in terms of communications at this point, I would really go for something like what Franklin Roosevelt used to do in terms of fireside chats. Fireside chats on the economy, really laying it out for people where we're coming from, which a lot of people don't understand in any kind of detail, and where we're going or where we have to go if we're going to create the type of vision which Trump has to make America great again. Something like that, not just, kind of letting the journalists control the conversation, I think is necessary at this point in time.
Yeah, I want to mention that we're working on trying to give you all the resources so that we can create an environment where we will have a better class of Republicans who do message more successfully. Adam, could you share the screen? Currently, we have this flyer on the Promethean Action website. If you go to the toolkit, you go to the Get Involved tab, you'll find it, you can download it. And I think we're in the process of setting up a procedure where you could actually order copies of it through our Promethean Action store. But this is one example of the messaging. We want to refine this. We want to come up with other things, but just to let people know, I showed you all that investment coming into the United States. This is just a little teeny tiny snapshot of what is actually happening. The other thing that I think many of you are familiar with is this is on our Promethean PAC website, and this is the point at which I will make the difference between Promethean Action, which is hosting this, is our policy arm, and our Political Action Committee, Promethean PAC, which will be directly intervening into the election campaigns. We welcome from our viewers intelligence on who the people are who are lining up for office. More than intelligence, we welcome you to get copies of this half-page flyer by going to the Promethean PAC website. Adam, maybe you could put that up on the screen. And you can see here, I'll give you a in real life version of this. You can get this on the Promethean PAC website. And in a sense, this is the litmus test we want people to use to vet the candidates. Let's get a better class of Republicans. Let's make it a MAGA Congress. Let's get Republicans who get that Donald Trump is creating a new Republican Party, which is the party of Main Street and not Wall Street. So, in terms of the messaging, we're gratified that we have some people who are paying attention to us, given the fact that Trump's Truth Social reposted Barbara's Monday show, and some other people who have some influence have been reposting some of our things. So, we hope our message is sort of reverberating up, into these layers. But our approach has always been, we're not waiting. We want to do the messaging ourselves, and we need your help to do that. You can order copies of this half-page flyer. You can get 100 for $23, and it goes up from there. And people are finding these really, right down there, you see the QR code or the what you could plug in and get to the website. The people who have ordered these are reporting to us they are great conversation starters. Hey, We're what, a week, 2 weeks away from Thanksgiving. You know, hopefully you will talk about politics and religion at the Thanksgiving table. I don't know. But again, these are great conversation starters because people don't have any idea that Trump is taking the Republican Party back to its origins of Abraham Lincoln, where it was a party of workers and producers. And in response to so many of the questions and you know, some of the diversions that people will get sucked into, to me, it's a question of people's identity. You know, I always keep referring to Scott Bessent's interview where he very, very precisely identifies the Democratic strategy is to compensate the loser. You know, we're going to take away your ability to support yourself, and we're going to throw enough at you, you know, subsidized Obamacare and SNAP so that you don't, you know, revolt. But what Bessent is saying is that we want to create a different kind of an economy where the people in the bottom 50% have the opportunities to succeed. So, you know, it's the difference between having the mentality of a loser or a victim, you know, or just some angry person who has no idea how you're ever going to fix things, and actually creating an economy where people can rediscover a productive identity. And I tell you, if people have a productive identity, if they are thinking about how do I go out and actually physically make the world a better place, which involves culturally, educationally, spiritually, and so on. But if you have that kind of productive activity, I want to go out there and improve God's creation. You will be less susceptible to all the war, all the diversions, everything that they throw at you. And you're going to be able to figure out a lot of things by yourself. So having discussions about this question of the new Republican Party of producers, I think is a really important first step. And I encourage people to take up the challenge as we go into Thanksgiving.
Hey, so I'm going to hilariously take a question from a Trump hater who came into it. Thank you for tuning in. But this person claims that MAGA still can't name one Trump accomplishment. So I'd like you both to name one Trump accomplishment.
I'm going to pick $5 billion a year coming from South Korea to rebuild the Philadelphia shipyards, which means thousands and thousands of good-paying working-class jobs. That's just my favorite. So,
I'll get unmuted here. I think I'll take stopping China from sending the precursors of fentanyl, which has killed, you know, approximately 100,000 Americans every year, which was announced yesterday, is a pretty big accomplishment.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Yeah, now this person's just coping a little bit. Trump's America is not doing that great. Oh, okay. So I'm just going to, yeah, Trump's America is not doing great. And it was 1 trillion times worse under Biden, but you're never going to say that, right? Okay. And not to mention under Trump, we're heading towards the right direction. So I'm sorry, troll, you just don't know what you're talking about. All right, I am going to give a quick shout out here to Danny Richards. Thank you very much. I believe this is your first super chat. God is real. He created us. I don't just hope so. I know so. I thank my Heavenly Father for all y'all at Promethean Update. Danny, and I thank you for the support. We actually believe in a very Lyndon LaRouche's economics. I don't have time to go into discuss it, but we truly believe that the center point of all economics is the existence of the human being. Economics must serve the human being. It must serve the family. Economics, by its basis, is about subduing, just like it talked about in Genesis, subduing the earth, making the world do what we need as human beings. It's in service of human beings, and we are in service of God. So thank you. Thank you very much for the super chat. We appreciate and understand where you're coming from with that. Okay, but I want to take another super chat here. This one's kind of mixed up, but I think Carl, so first off, Carl, thank you very much for the super chat. I'm going to take your question here. Why does Trump keep spraying the skies? It's proven that it's not condensation. Okay. All right. And why can they come up with money for Ukraine, Argentina, and Israel, but when the airline workers need to get paid or SNAP needs to get funded, they can't find any money? And actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take this up with a question here. I'm going to combine this in with another question. So this is from Gail. Trying to see it. This is from Gail. Why won't Trump, 1, reveal the Epstein files, 2, stop funding the war in Israel, as well as in 3, Ukraine? So I kind of want to take these two questions together because I think there's some overlap here.
Okay. All right, finally. So look, there are all sorts of discussions going on the internet about the topics which you're actually talking about, Gail. I think I talked a little bit about the Epstein files. They're going to be revealed by the Congress, okay? Trump is frustrated, as I said before, that his sex life, he has no involvement with Epstein in terms of the crimes that Epstein committed. People are interested in Epstein in terms of a lot of other people. You're going to find them when these files actually get released. What does it add up to? In my humble opinion, very little. You're not going to find how the oligarchy controls the United States in the Epstein files. You're probably going to find some people in the elite who have very weird sexual proclivities, like Larry Summers, for example, who's in the Epstein files. There are all sorts of names in the Epstein files where they actually involved in sex trafficking with children. Doubtful. They had, basically Epstein was a fixer, an attempted mover and shaker in the world of very dirty financial money laundering. And that's what all of this stuff is actually about. I believe that Trump has hesitated on, revealing the full names of these people who are in the files. There is no client list. There's simply a log of what Epstein's activities were. A lot of the people who are the victims here have been more than amply compensated by the plea deal, which Epstein actually made in Florida, which required him to pay anybody who came forward and said they were abused by him, many of whom are not even, the age of children, but are adult women who got millions of dollars from that plea agreement. So this is a very dirty bunch of things. And I think the president has hesitated because if my name is in the Epstein files because he was being sold as a guy who was a fixer in the financial world, people might come to the conclusion that I was also involved in his sex crimes, or that I'm being blackmailed by Israel, which is the other unfounded conclusion involved in this entire thing. So that's why Trump is hesitant. He doesn't believe that this is what people should be talking about at this point in time when we've got to wage an economic revolution. And as I said before, starting with E. Jean Carroll and Stormy Daniels, how often have the British moved against Trump based on alleged sex crimes? I'm not going to say anything more about Michael Wolff or any of the other stuff that has actually occurred. I'll probably at some point write a piece about it, which I'll post on the website. Stop funding the war in Israel as well as in Ukraine. Well, you got to deal with the Congress here, all right? Trump doesn't control the funding, in terms of Israel or Ukraine. There are very, very, very substantial caucuses in the Congress who are putting still a whole lot of bills forward to fund the war in Ukraine and to essentially continue to support Israel. There's national security reasons for supporting Israel in the land of the Middle East. Whatever one thinks about Netanyahu's peculiar and savage response to terrorism, actual terrorism by Hamas. In my view, Ukraine is a completely different story. That is a project to destroy Russia by the British, which has been going on literally for centuries. But if you just Google Ukraine caucus in the Congress, see what happens when you pull up that picture of every single senator almost and every single congressman. So has Trump pulled out of funding? He's not giving any more money to Ukraine. He simply said, if you want to buy our weapons, you can buy them, Europe. We're not doing that anymore. And in many respects, he's answered that question. Why can't you find money for paying people? Well, all of that stuff is controlled by appropriations. And you can try and steal from Social Security, or you could try and steal from Medicare. You could try and steal from this, that, or the other and solve the immediate crisis, but you'd be violating the appropriations for which the money was actually sent out there for. We don't have an emergency rainy day fund to actually, resolve a crisis caused by the entire Democratic population of Congress at any given point in time. There's no emergency fund set up to deal with what they just did. So that's how I'd answer your questions.
Thank you very much, Barbara. I want to give a quick shout out here to our super chat. Thank you, BSV Maximus, for the support. Our organization is funded. We're a reader and viewer supported organization. So thank you very much. We can't do this without your support. Thank you, Ruth Hill. We appreciate every dollar people can contribute. Helps us produce more shows and more videos. Thank you very much. And also a quick shout out to the Exorcist from up north. Thank you very much, brother. We know how hard everyone up there is fighting. And I truly believe that one day we will get rid of globalism. Globalization will finally be done. We're getting closer. So thank you everyone for the support. I'm going to take the next question here. Again, these are coming from our newsletter supporters. We have a daily newsletter. We're going to send you stuff every day. You can find a link is in the video description, or just search for Promethean Action. It's on our website. So this next question here is from Pamela. What are your thoughts on the relationship between Venezuela's Maduro and Putin? I saw the prediction that was made by Ironclad Podcast. Maduro will be fleeing to Russia in a not too distant future. Why Russia? So I asked Grok, what is the relationship between Maduro and Putin? Grok did not hold back. I had no idea of the depth of their relationship. So back to my original question, what are your thoughts on Maduro and Putin? How does Trump's unprecedented military buildup in the Caribbean fit in with this relationship? Thank you, Pamela, for your comments and your questions.
There is a very close relationship between Maduro and Putin, although I think it's basically kind of an arm's length relationship. I don't think Putin is actually involved in the drug trade like Maduro. And, I think it's generally kind of the thing that the Russians do, which is to try and make friends with anybody of a similar mind cast. If you wake up suddenly and you look at our neighbors to the south, and what's happened there through the successive Obama and Biden administrations, it's not so much Maduro and Putin, it's the level of Chinese involvement in the Western Hemisphere, which of course, I think Trump is going back to the Monroe Doctrine, which says, this is our hemisphere. This is how we want to actually have relationships with people in our hemisphere. And we're confronted with a huge problem, which is a lot of these countries have become nothing but narco states under these horrible times, with the previous administration. And, we've got to actually figure out how we want to end the drug trade, which is, killing our people, but it's also destroying these countries. And you could go through and name them. It's not so much that Venezuela is directly involved in the transport of cocaine from Colombia. It is basically that there is an entire organization of the drug trade based in the gangs, which have been set up by Maduro and the Venezuelan government, almost a kind of dope Inc., if you will, a minor thing that, they don't necessarily do all the drugs themselves. They are organizers of the entire drug trade. And that's why Trump has basically sent the military into the Caribbean to see if we can't cause the people of Venezuela or other people to end this kind of situation of, sort of enforced infiltration of terrible things in our own hemisphere. I don't think Trump is positioning that to stage some kind of color revolution in Venezuela. I think he is really stationing these people to send a message to the drug trade of cut it out, or we're going to come after you. And he is completely fixed on the idea that we're going to stop at nothing to destroy the drug trade. So that's how I'd answer your question.
Thank you very much, Barbara. I want to give a quick shout out to Stu, super sticker for superheroes. Thank you from our friends in the upside down world down there. How does gravity work down there? totally kidding. Thank you.
Water in the
tips pulled upwards. Thank you very much. We know how much support we get from Australia. And like I said, our friend from Canada, one day we are going to get we're going to get rid of this globalization problem if we all keep fighting. Another one just came in from the ENT shop. Thank you very much for your support. America was founded on biblical beliefs. We need American Christian bill. No other religion could disrespect, infringe on America's biblical principles. Yes, I agree. The United States was absolutely founded on the best of Christian history and on Christian biblical beliefs. And yet, it's very interesting. Our founder fathers still believed in the separation between church and state, which is, I find that very, very interesting when you look at the history of governments. So yes, we believe both very much in the separation of church and state, but at the same time, we were absolutely built on the idea that human beings are in the image of the Creator. And Christian,
Adam, I want to give a shout out. I saw that Elizabeth, Carol, and George went to the Promethean Pack site and ordered half-page flyers. So thank you.
Thank you, anyone. Thank you, anyone who's ordered stuff from us. I have this MAGA 2028 T-shirt. Maybe you guys have seen it. I'm just going to pin this up. You can get a MAGA 2028 T-shirt at our shop. It'll be a cool, if you're looking to start some discussions, this shirt will definitely do it. Trust me, go into public with this one on. Okay. Thank you very much. I'm going to take another super chat popped in here. Jacob Brinker. Can you comment on why community banks and credit unions are so vital to the economy, and how do you think they will stay competitive? I think this is an incredibly important question, because these mega banks, these Bank of Americas, these Wells Fargo, all these huge banks, man, do they suck dealing with. So the idea of a community of smaller banks and credit unions seems so appealing right now. Barbara and Susan?
Yeah, I'll just point out that Scott Bessent comes back to this all the time. The whole idea here is the mega banks don't make loans for the productive economy. They haven't done so ever since the financial collapse of 2008, where they essentially got the upper hand on everything. And so community banks and credit unions, as he says, they know you in the community when you come in and ask for a loan. They know you and can lend into the productive economy. And this administration is supporting them with the idea that we have to really revive Main Street, not Wall Street. Wall Street is having its run. they can do that over there. But the main part of what President Trump and the Secretary of Treasury are proposing is that we get a credit system based on community banks and credit unions lending for productive activities for small business, others, and entrepreneurs actually get capable of moving forward in this economy. If you have a successful business and you need a loan to actually scale it up, you would never get it from a mega bank. That's just not what they do. You have to depend on your community bank or credit union to actually make those loans. And so they're going to be supported by this administration totally.
Yeah, and I think one of the critical questions is, how are they going to get capitalized? And I think it's going to be very interesting when Trump gets a new Fed chairman next year. I guess he's also going to be able to get a new Atlanta, either Fed chairman or board member who just resigned. So I think there's probably some very creative thinking going on in terms of how even an institution as evil as the Federal Reserve can somehow, there's elements of it that can be pushed in the direction of supporting, helping to capitalize these small banking institutions. I think the other thing they may be thinking about, there's lots of offices, loan office in the Energy Department, the International Finance Development Bank, I believe in the Commerce Department. There's all sorts of things which probably have been lying kind of fallow for years, which can also be the sources for channeling investment into these areas and perhaps helping to capitalize some of these smaller institutions.
Thank you very much, Barbara and Susan. Okay, we still have plenty more questions. I'm going to take this next one actually on Melania Trump. I think that's a good thing, and I think we could probably say something on it. Would you expand on the absolutely wonderful work the First Lady is doing to protect our children nationwide and worldwide as well? Thank you, Marie, for the comment and question.
Okay, I finally got unmuted here. Yeah, she has had both in the first administration and in this administration an initiative she calls Be Best, which actually seeks to protect children throughout the world. She's particularly focused on foster kids and making sure that foster kids have absolutely, wonderful economic and other alternatives to be able to get their educations and to be able to actually move from foster care into something like higher education or a skilled job, etc. She's also focused on, in the Russia-Ukraine war, actually dealing with the issue of people who fled to Russia, children who fled to Russia. They weren't kidnapped by Russia, which is the stupid claim, but children who actually ended up in Russia because of the war in the Donbass in particular. And she's really focused on reuniting those kids with their family, and she has actually worked directly with President Putin to do that. So these are great initiatives for the First Lady. And I was very impressed, on another topic by the video she made talking about thinking outside the box, creativity, trying to foster creativity in the next generation. And so that's what I'd say about that. It's a terrific initiative.
Thank you, Barbara. I think the last few questions here we're going to take is on tariffs. I meant to take this one earlier, but it's always a little bit tough for us. And this is actually a very challenging question. So I think we might end on this one. We'll see. I have clients and friends who are Trump supporters that are getting upset with the tariffs affecting their businesses in a negative way. Here's the email I received. Trump's inflation is hitting us in the form of tariffs. Just had the price of a dining room set and bar stools go up 25% because of tariffs. If I get the same thing made in the United States, it will still cost twice the price. All I'm trying to do is be fair with my clients. I get quotes from vendors in good faith, get approval on payments from my clients, and then some random tariff comes up between the time the items are ordered and the time they ship to the tune of 25 to 30%, jacking the price off. I'm pissed. The tariff thing is out of control. Foreign countries aren't paying them. They're not going to eat it. The American consumers and businesses are paying them. The bar stools, dining room chairs, the dining room table, and the entertainment units are being made in Canada. Over the weekend, Trump added another 10%. So when I get the final balance, they will add that in. What am I supposed to tell my client? I can't go back and ask for more money. And then there's the whole area rug situation, speaking of hot messes. Even fabrics that are made here can have tariffs if some of the fabric content comes from outside the United States. Most US fabric companies have gotten a handle on it. The biggest situation is tariffs that get slapped on in between the time the order is placed and the time it ships. Thank you, Eloise, for your comment, your question, and for your report here. I open this floor up to Barbara and Susan.
Well, I just say, it is very disruptive. What is that old phrase? You're trying to change the wheels on the car while you're going downhill. In this case, maybe we're trying to go back uphill again. I had a discussion. I went to a speech that J.D. Vance gave at a machine tool place in Michigan a couple months ago, and I was sitting next to the one of the officers of the company, and I asked her, "Okay, how is this affecting you?" And she says, "It's affecting us. Obviously, we're paying higher prices because we don't yet." And here's the bottom line: we don't have enough of this manufacturing in the United States. Remember, the whole reason we are susceptible to this is we became, as Trump called us, a subject country. We surrendered to the British free trade doctrine. We turned ourselves back into a backwater colony where we do not produce the things we need here in the United States to take care of ourselves, because Wall Street figured that they could make a lot of money doing it, and people got used to buying cheap stuff. I've done it. You know, you buy a cheap piece of crap on Amazon because you looked for the lowest price, you know, and that was your criteria. So we put ourselves in this position. And what Trump is trying to do is get us out of it. We need to figure out, and Trump is trying to do it with $17 trillion of investment and new lines of credit coming from various departments and so on, to make this stuff in the United States. That's how you deal with it. End of story. And there's a whole lot more people who need to understand that and fight to support Trump on that, and fight to ensure that we have a Congress that will understand that, because part of the, part of what you're talking about in terms of some of the fluctuation and the instability is because Trump is doing a lot of this by executive orders. Everybody's sitting there now saying, what's the Supreme Court going to do in terms of this? I think we addressed this last time, that they'll probably give him a partial win on it. And if it's not a complete win on tariffs, then he's going to have to go find some other way to do some of these things, which still need to be done. So, my bottom line in terms of this is, I don't blame Trump. I blame everybody in the United States who tolerated this or supported these policies that got us in this position in the last 40 years. Maybe we better take account of that and figure out how to change that.
I would just add that given the situation with Canada, I would tell your client that she ought to look to Mark Carney and Doug Ford, because they're on a campaign to actually defeat Donald Trump. And they've made it very clear that their position towards the United States and Donald Trump is as an adversary nation. Just go look it up. You're going to see that. Mark Carney, who's the current guy running Canada, is the central banker of central bankers of the world. At a young age, he became the head of the Bank of England, which had never happened before, after heading the Bank of Canada, and now he's the prime minister. And if you look at his history, he's the exact opposite of what Trump is trying to do in the United States. He is 100% for the Green New Deal, the World Economic Forum, all the things which people recognize now as being oligarchic evil. And that's his entire background and curriculum vitae. And he's trying to wage war on the United States. So I would basically tell your client, please go look up what, he even proposed that, back at Jackson Hole in 2019, he proposed that no Congress in the world be allowed to actually have control over money, that it should be turned over to a group of central banking experts to actually control all financial dealings in the world. That's a financial dictatorship by definition. So that's what I would start to talk about in terms of what's causing the peculiar situation with Canada.
Thank you very much, Barbara and Susan. Okay. Thank you very much, everyone, for tuning in. I have 2 final super chats really quick. Thank you again, Danny. But I wanted to say something about this. Freedom of religion is not in our Constitution. Religious freedom meant within Christianity to be Protestant, Catholic, Baptist, any other Christian denomination. It was not meant to include anything out of Christianity. Well, I don't know. I don't know about that, Danny. You're right. Freedom of religion is not in our Constitution. Neither is the second thing you said, that religious freedom meant within Christianity. So they're both not in the Constitution. I do agree absolutely in freedom of religion, but I don't know about the second part. I think our founding fathers had a much more open idea about what it meant to actually believe in a single creator, one God, not paganism or polytheism. Okay, and I'd also like to give a quick shout out to Jody Davis. Thank you very much. Thank you for the sanity and clarity. Since discovering Promethean Action, thanks to YouTube, I never miss anything you do. And share, share, share. I'd like to say thank you to everyone. Please like this video if you haven't yet already. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We have 3 political briefings we do a week. That's on Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday. And then we also do this live question and answer show every Thursday, where we take the best questions from our newsletter audience. If you're interested in getting our daily newsletter, we send an email literally every day. We have to. There's just so much going on. Send an email every day. The link is in the description, and you can just search the web for Promethean Action. It will show up. We have very good SEO. So any final questions or comments from Barbara or Susan before we end today's show?
I think people just have to stay very, very focused on the fact that Donald Trump is carrying out the biggest economic revolution, certainly since Abraham Lincoln, and maybe since our founding fathers. We have to free ourselves again from the British Empire. And the enemy wants you distracted, diverted. They want you to say, I'm here for the perp walks. I'm here for the Epstein files. I'm here for this. I didn't vote for Donald Trump for a perp walk. I voted for Donald Trump for an economic revolution. And I think he's delivering. But it's going to take everybody on this call and a whole lot more people to make sure that he succeeds.
I can't say it better. We're in a period where the enemy is attacking every single day, and it's a big attack. I think it's getting up to the volume that Russiagate was, because the Democratic Party has essentially really identified itself as a bunch of radical terrorists out to overthrow the government. And Trump is doing the criminal investigations, which will rid us of the deep state. Tulsi Gabbard is essentially got a task force working through who did what within the intelligence community throughout this entire coup, which we've been through. So these things take a little bit of time and deliberation, but there is a, there is a determination to indict where we can and shame where we can't. And I think that's a very good idea as to how to go about this.
All right. Thank you, Barbara and Susan. Thank you to our dedicated audience for tuning in every Thursday. Again, please like and subscribe. MEGA 2028 t-shirt should be right under the link, should be right under the video. We also have a merch store. We have shirts with their logo on it. We have coffee mugs. I keep saying I'm about to do other designs. I promise I'm going to get to it. But again, everyone, thank you very much. We'll see you next Thursday. Have a great day.